Hi, everybody. Welcome to 13 o'clock. This is our second episode, and we have a really, really fun topic. I'm so excited about this. Tom, tell them what the topic is.
The topic is the Satanic Panic.
Oh, I can't wait.
The Satanic Panic of the 1980s. If you didn't live through it, you don't know. You don't even know the half of it.
They won't even believe it.
They won't believe it.
You guys will not believe this. If if you're a young person listening to this that did not live through the 1980s like we did, you will not even believe this is a thing. But I assure you, it really did happen. It was a real thing. And
it was one of the few times in history where you could watch full-grown adults act like total idiots.
Well, you can kind of see that anytime.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, we lived through it though, and as goth kids, it was the time in which you would walk down the streets and people would throw things at you out of their car.
Yeah.
Call you a Satanist.
I remember those days.
And accuse you of doing bad things to children.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was a shit show. It was a total shit show. But why don't you lay it out, Jenny? Why don't you tell us what the Satanic Panic was and about when it started?
Okay, well, the Satanic Panic, as it is understood generally in the media, really didn't kind of kick in until the 80s. But I do think that the kind of seeds of it, the roots of it, kind of
1960s
were probably late 60s. And I think what was happening, in the late 60s, there was the whole countercultural revolution, the hippies, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And, there was this whole schism between the young and the old.
New Age.
Yeah. And
New Age religion.
New Age, like people were abandoning traditional religion. And, so you got like these people that were getting into these like silly cults and things like that.
They were obsessed with weird cults. Most of them New Age cults.
Yeah. And so then like in the 70s, it seemed like there was kind of a lot of interest in cultic type entertainment. You had movies like Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist and The Omen.
Well, Rosemary's Baby was late 60s though.
Yeah, 68 that came out. And actually the book came out in 66, I want to say.
You got to take it back to Anton LaVey.
Right.
I would say that was probably the very beginning. He was laying the foundations for the Satanic Panic to come.
Yeah.
Now, then Rosemary's Baby was kind of happening at the same time. They kind of came up together.
Yeah.
And that was like the foundation that I think the Satanic Panic was built on.
Yeah.
The concept that there were secret satanic cults of people that you would never guess that they were involved in it, and they wanted your baby. Or they wanted to get you pregnant.
Yeah.
And then they wanted your baby.
Yeah.
I think that was pretty much the same general concept throughout the entire Satanic Panic.
Yeah.
It's just that other things started to get thrown into it. Like music, heavy metal music, what else? Serial killers got thrown into it.
Yeah. Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
But, so yeah, I think what ended up happening was that people that kind of grew up in the 60s, once they got to the 80s, when they were having kids of their own, maybe, they were remembering all this crazy shit they did, like back in the 60s, like, oh, I was in a cult or I was interested in whatever. So I think they kind of projected, like, onto the society at large that there were these huge organized groups of Satanists that were routinely kidnapping children and sacrificing people.
Using women as breeders.
Using women as broodmares and that kind of
Right, so they could sacrifice the baby and eat the baby and
poop on the baby.
Yeah, just do whatever they wanted.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
It was ridiculous.
And like I said, I think a lot of it was projection.
And people were buying into it. That was the weirdest thing.
Which is hard to believe.
Yeah.
But it was actually a pretty mainstream thing. It's like pretty much every daytime talk show at the time.
Well, that was later. That was the 80s.
Yeah, that was late 80s, yeah. Yeah, it didn't really, I don't know. It kind of felt like it had fizzled out like by the late 90s.
Marilyn Manson happened.
Probably after that kind of thing.
Yeah, Marilyn Manson
went mainstream.
Marilyn Manson and Jerry Springer.
Yeah.
Together killed the Satanic Panic.
Yeah.
Because when Jerry Springer came out, all of a sudden you realized you were being trolled by all these daytime talk shows.
Who were pretending to be serious.
They pretended to be, wait a minute, hold on. All this time these daytime talk shows were not respectable? Oh my God. We got trolled. Yeah.
Yeah. Who knew?
Yeah. And then of course Marilyn Manson came out, who was openly calling himself the Antichrist superstar. And he was a likable guy who was kind of pulled the He was, it was a funny. I thought he was funny,
He was very funny and well spoken also.
Yeah, he could answer a question intelligently, and he had a little bit of charisma before he went crazy. Yeah. Well,
and gained 400 pounds.
Yeah.
Sorry, Marilyn.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's get back to it.
So basically, here was the thing. And like I said, we're mostly going to talk about the 80s because that was kind of the heyday of it. Mm. And that's what I remember the best.
Yeah.
Now, it came about, the biggest things, I think, were kids that were getting into heavy metal music. Slayer, Venom, even like the older ones like Iron Maiden and
they went back to Judas Priest. And, they were messing with actually AC/DC of all things. AC/DC and check this out. What was it? The guys that did Stairway to Heaven. Led Zeppelin. Yeah, them too.
Well, because they had like backwards masking.
Yeah, which wasn't there.
No, it wasn't.
It was ridiculous.
It wasn't there. And so there are kids that are into heavy metal, kids that were playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. And what was funny is it didn't happen all at once. It was one thing got piled on after another.
Yeah.
You had to live through it to understand the shit show that transpired. It was as if a cyclone of shit was being sucked into a black hole of shit. Imagine a cyclone and a black hole made of human feces happening at the same time. That's what it was like.
Shitception.
It was like shitception. Religion was in there. Heavy metal was in there. It was absolutely ridiculous.
And the shitty thing, too, is that it seems like a lot of, because like a lot of the, serial killers, Son of Sam, the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, they kind of, whereas before the Satanic Panic happened, these guys would have just been seen as like lone psychos, which they were.
Yeah.
But, in light of the Satanic Panic with all these people thinking there was a big organized network of these crazy people. Yeah. So they kind of got, glommed onto that whole theme, where they were part of some
serial killers,
and that started with Charles Manson.
Serial killers, cult leaders, rock music, and Anton LaVey all got mushed into one thing. Yeah, and it was after your baby, it was after your children. Yeah, the churches had all the parents just in a total panic. It was literally a modern witch hunt.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
And law enforcement was involved. They had people that went to prison over this. No allegations. We're going to get into that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and that's kind of the shit. I mean, it's funny now. Like,
funny now. It wasn't funny then.
But not so funny then, and not so funny for some of the people that
went to prison on false allegations.
These false
ridiculous allegations.
Yeah. And so let's kind of talk about, what do we want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons first?
I think Dungeons & Dragons is probably when it first started to come into the public eye.
Right.
En masse.
Yeah.
Get to the kid. It was a story about a kid who came up missing, and they blamed it on Dungeons & Dragons.
And generally, this is what happened. I mean, Dungeons & Dragons had been around for a while, but it was a pretty cult. Yeah, it was a pretty cult thing. It was
an underground game.
It was kind of an underground game. A lot of kids played it.
Real nerdy. Real
nerdy kids.
Right.
And so it didn't really, make any kind of inroads into the mainstream until later. And there was a kid, James Dallas Egbert III.
Yeah.
And he was like a child prodigy.
Yeah, he was in college at 15.
Yeah, 15 or 16
Computer nerd. Computer whiz.
Yeah. And he went missing.
Yeah.
From his dorm room.
Yeah.
And when they were looking in his dorm room and trying to find out where he might have gone.
Well, his parents hired a PI to find him. Right. First.
So in his dorm room, there was like a cork board, and there were these push pins in it, and the shape that the push pins were in, and I don't even know why the guy.
Yeah, he was pretty brilliant, actually. He saw the shape of those push pins.
He saw the shape of the push pins, and he said, that looks like
the underground.
The layout of the underground tunnels, or
steam tunnels.
Steam tunnels
underneath the school.
Underneath the school.
All right.
So he figured that's where the kid had gone.
Yeah, because he played Dungeons and Dragons, and that was about dungeons, and so they thought that he went down inside the steam tunnels to play this game.
Right. Which
they knew nothing about.
Right. And as it turned out, now, they didn't find him down there first.
No, he wasn't down there.
He wasn't down there.
No.
And actually, they didn't find him for a while, did they?
No, they found him at his friend's house.
Yeah, he went to his friend's house. What had ended up happening that they didn't really find out later
is that he did go down into the steam tunnels.
He did go down there.
And he took an overdose of Quaaludes
with the intention of committing suicide.
But
right?
it didn't kill him.
Yeah.
So he goes to a friend's house.
And hides out.
They were able to find him, and they put him up. Wait a minute. No. They were able to find him, and then he moved to Louisiana.
Right.
Where he got a job working in the oil field and tried to kill himself again.
With
cyanide. But he survived.
But he survived that also.
He was like Rasputin.
I know, you couldn't
poison him. Yeah. Eventually, he ended up killing himself with a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
That was in 1984.
Right. But it had nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons.
But the popular media conception was that, I mean, just because of those push pins on the thing that the investigator saw that looked like those steam tunnels. And like I said, the kid actually did go down to the steam tunnels, but he was going down there to kill himself. I don't think it had anything to do with the game.
It had nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons. He was just he was unstable.
Right.
He had a lot of drug problems.
But in the media, for some reason, that really caught the media's attention.
They even based a movie off of it.
Well, Rona Jaffe wrote a book called Mazes and Monsters, and they made a movie
based on that.
With a very young Tom Hanks was in it.
Wow.
So it was kind of from that point on that the whole, the whole relationship between Dungeons and Dragons and luring children into Satanism
and suicide
and murder and stuff like that. Yeah. That's kind of where that came from, because with all these like kind of fundamentalists in their pulpits, they're telling all of their parishioners that, this game is teaching your children how to cast spells.
Magic, selling their soul to the devil.
Right.
Killing their parents.
Yeah.
Because what would happen is every now and then you'd have a psycho kill his parents, and then when they'd get him, he'd say, well, Dungeons and Dragons made me do it.
Well, yeah.
Because that's what he heard on television.
Yeah.
And maybe he did play Dungeons and Dragons, but it had nothing to do with the murders that they did.
Right. And I was going to say, too, that's why this kind of thing, it actually kind of ends up eating itself in the end. And actually, it makes its own momentum, because even if Dungeons and Dragons didn't have anything to do with the first ones, by the time it gets into the media, then people are committing crimes and blaming it on that.
Yeah.
Even if it didn't have anything to do with it. So then that just keeps fueling it, and fueling it is just like snowballs. And I think that's kind of what ended up happening in this case. But, and it's kind of sad now, but to think about now.
Yeah.
Because Dungeons and Dragons just seems so innocent.
Yeah, it was an innocent, nerdy game.
Yeah, it was just a nerdy game.
Rolling dice, using your imagination.
Talk
about the church. What the church did not want people using their imagination.
No.
That was very dangerous.
Well, yeah, obviously. I was going to say, too, we actually, we watched a lot of the old VHS videos. There's a lot of them on YouTube. If you look up, there's a channel called Occult Hilarity. Yeah. And it has a bunch of ones on there. There was one where there was these two preachy douchebags like talking to each other, and one had a really pretty cocksucking mouth.
Oh, yeah, it was. It was a Freddie Mercury level.
It really
mouth.
was.
It was.
And nice Ken hair.
I'm sure he ended up in some kind of scandal involving
we
male
need to check on that.
and
We need
coke.
to check on that guy.
Yeah.
But these people actually, they had like a whole table full of toys that I'm sure they played with after the camera was off.
Some of the toys quite awesome.
Yeah, they were quite awesome. And this guy basically, like not the cocksucking mouth guy, but the other guy, basically said that he believed the rumor that if you took the pieces from Dungeons and Dragons, like the little miniature figures that some people used to play them, and threw them into a fire, into the incinerator, that they would scream.
That you'd hear screams.
Because obviously...
Well, that's what happens when you throw a Ouija board in a fire. Screams and green smoke.
Well, that's true.
That's what they say.
That's true. I've seen it happen. No, I'm just kidding. I really haven't seen that.
Yeah.
But that's bullshit too. But... And also, the funniest thing, too, about this particular video that we were watching and all their awesome toys.
That they said E.T. was gay.
Yeah, and
Remember that?
I missed that connection. What was the connection that they made?
I didn't get it either. It had something to do with his finger or something. And he could levitate.
Like gay guys can?
And they were saying that he was some kind of a substitute Jesus because he came down from heaven and he could levitate and save children. Something like that. It was really bad.
But how do they get gay out of that, though?
I don't know. It's
got to be the finger, right?
I wasn't really paying close attention.
I wasn't either, but it's like, well, it just seemed like it just kind of went for the.
It was blurring. The bullshit just kind of blurred.
Yeah.
You know, every time
we were so busy.
Like,
we were so busy laughing at what they said last time that we missed.
We couldn't keep up with it.
But well, the funny thing too, they were talking about He-Man, and they said, well, He-Man is satanic because He-Man is master of the universe, and only God is the master of the universe. So, and also they said some shit about Skeletor's staff with the ram head on it or whatever. Oh, and also my favorite thing too about that was that they said the Smurfs were satanic, yo. Yeah,
and they had black lips, and they don't have lips at all.
Right. Well, because they said they were satanic because they're like dead people because their skin is blue and their lips are black, and I'm like, are you high? It's like they don't have black lips.
And they said that little girl Smurf was a transsexual.
Yeah, I don't remember that episode.
No, I don't remember that either.
Did she turn into a boy on one episode?
They said she was a boy that turned into a girl. But I don't remember that.
I don't remember that.
I didn't really watch that.
Like, I saw some of it. I'm just, And
what was her name? Smurfette?
Smurfette, yeah. I did think when I was younger that she was probably like the victim of a lot of gangbangs.
Because there's so many. Because she was the only girl.
Because she was the only girl, she was the only chick around.
I don't think Smurfs had sex. I think it just came out of mushrooms.
That's what they wanted you to think.
Okay, let's move on. The next one would be, what do we have on the list?
Well, we wanted to talk...
Oh, we got to talk about the police training video.
Oh, this was awesome.
Yeah, lay this one out. This one was really
Okay. So somewhere, and this is on YouTube too, if you guys want to watch it, and it's called The Law Enforcement Guide to Satanic Cults. And
this thing is hilarious.
Oh, it's so good. It is
hilarious.
And it came out in 1994.
We were amazed that it was that late.
And I thought, look, I graduated from high school in 1990.
I was coming out of the Army at that time.
And you were coming out of the Army in 1994. And I had thought that it had all kind of blown over by that point.
Evidently not.
Unless the dipshits that made this video and they were trying to sell it to police and no one bought it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone ever bought this thing.
I can't see how the police would have bought that training video. Because that doesn't teach a cop anything.
It doesn't seem particularly helpful.
No.
And now the guy that made it was this old bald guy named Gordon Coulter, who they have listed as cop/pastor. Mm-hmm. And then there's this other guy who had the most magical mullet.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so good.
Imagine, okay, you know David Bowie from the Ziggy Stardust phase.
Right,
remember how he had that red or that orangish mullet?
Yeah.
Imagine you magnified that. Twice.
It was like that.
Really tall and really long, and then you took that mullet and put it on a possum. That's what this dude looks like. Dude looks like a possum. You'll see. We're going to put a picture of him up.
Yeah, I hope I can find one. But
he's hilarious. He's supposed to be an ex-satanic priest.
Right.
And to prove it, he shows a picture of himself in a priest outfit standing beside a table full of occult... what do they call it? Occultic. Occultic, making words.
Paraphernalia.
Occult paraphernalia that looks like you bought it at the local spiritualist shop. All right, and that was his proof of being a satanic priest. And it's just hilarious. It opens up with a demonstration of him walking through a park, finding occult symbols on trees and on the ground. And as he walks through the park, they cut to an overhead map, some kind of artificially generated map.
Yeah, like a little digital art.
Yeah, that doesn't look real at all. And every time he gets to a location, it's supposed to be pointing it on the map somehow, but it doesn't tell you. You have to see it to believe it. You can't tell where on that map they're supposed to be pointing or why it matters.
Well, the awesome thing, I think what he was trying to do was say this. I don't even remember what park it was. But he's like, okay, well, this is what law enforcement should be looking out for where if you go into a park, and this is how you know that Satanists or occultists or whatever have been in here doing rituals, all right? Yeah. And so, like he was showing, now we come...
Chalk.
Yeah, so we come into the park, and here's a tree, and it has a pentagram drawn on it in chalk. And, you know, this is like the entrance to the ritual area or whatever. Yeah. And the most hilarious thing is that when he goes over, there's a tree with a pentagram on it, which is right side up. It's not even like a satanic upside down one.
Yeah, he points that out.
Which he does point that out. But then there's another tree with one with an upside down cross, and he's like touching the chalk, and he's like, oh, it's pretty fresh. And I'm like, douchebag, you drew that. Yeah. You drew that.
For the video, of course.
For the video.
Yeah. It's just funny.
They couldn't find any of that shit in real life.
No. And then remember he finds the noose. He finds it. This could have been used in an animal sacrifice or a human sacrifice.
Look, there's blood on it.
Look, there's blood on it. He's touching it with his hands.
I didn't see
contaminating evidence.
I didn't see any blood on it.
No, it was just hilarious.
Well, and the funny thing too is that the implication being, it's like, look, if people are going to go into a park and do some little pagan ritual or something, and they're not sacrificing animals or anything, they're not doing anything illegal.
Oh, you know, do you remember he said homosexuals come out here to the park?
Yeah.
And do all that. So he's like equating Satanists with homosexuality. Yeah. Remember that?
Well, because remember, like, even a couple minutes before he said that, when he was like, Satan this, Satan that, I was like, homos, when is he going to bring up the homos?
Yeah, yeah, and there he did.
And there he did. Like, a couple minutes later, he's like, homosexuality. So I'm like, okay, yep, there it was. Fundamentalist bingo.
It was a total shit show.
Fundamentalist bingo.
Yeah, it was good.
And so there was that douchebag. And then he also had a segment where he showed different types of altars. Like, this is a satanic altar, and this is a voodoo altar, and this is a Wiccan.
Oh, and then they list off all the different ceremonies and on what date they happen. Yeah. And he listed so many of them. Basically, there's some occult ritual happening on every fucking day.
Pretty much every fucking day. So
yeah.
So they were kind of trying to make, like, cops... And so any crime anywhere is satanic. Just that's pretty much...
Yeah, he lists off all of the attributes of a satanic crime, and when he lists them all off, it's like, well, that's any crime.
It was every crime
Every crime you could imagine could be put into the
best thing about that list...
ritualistic crime.
The best thing about that list was that it was not... Because if it was me, I would have put it in, like, order of severity. But he didn't really do that. It's kind of like, you know, child sacrifice. And then it was like vandalism.
Yeah. What about orgies? The orgies including vaginal, oral, and anal sex. Yeah. You know, and it was always getting into the anal. Always oral and anal. It's just weird.
Vaginal. Every time they said orgy, it was vaginal, oral, anal activities.
Activities, that's what he called them.
And I said, hey, dibs on the band name, the Anal Activities. Yeah, okay, I'm going to form a band called the Anal Activities. Yeah, look for our first album coming out soon.
And you're like, well, don't orgies include all that anyway?
That's what I mean. It's like, what other kind of orgies are there?
We're going to have a vaginal only orgy.
Yeah, no anal, no mouth.
No anal, no mouth.
Nothing. Just vaginas.
Yeah, it's funny.
I don't know what kind of orgies these people are.
What else was in that training video? Was there anything else that you remember that was awesome?
Was kind of...
That was pretty much... It was just really hokey.
It's on YouTube. It's called Law Enforcement Guide to Satanic Cults from 1994.
I can't imagine...
Whole thing's on YouTube.
I can't imagine any police force buying that. But if they did, shame on them.
I hope they didn't.
God. Okay.
Oh. You know what I forgot?
What's that?
Now, this is kind of terrible, so this is kind of like a sensitive subject. But on the training video, before we get off that, they had a list of, like, symptoms of how you could tell if your child had been ritually satanic abused.
I remember. I know what you're getting at.
You know what I'm going to say.
I know what you're getting at.
You know what I'm saying. And, like, you know, yes, child abuse is awful, okay? Yeah. But some of the shit they had on there...
It was ridiculous.
Well, a lot of it was, like, really generic. It was just kind of like any kid.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, the kid is...
Got syphilis. Got gonorrhea. Well, of course.
And I'm like, yeah, duh. That should be a red flag right there. And our favorite
if there's blood or semen in his pants.
Yeah.
You know, well, yeah.
I'm like, obviously.
I would think so. Yeah.
Obviously.
Just ridiculous.
Also,
if you touch his booty and his sphincter relaxes. That was another one. Remember that? I'm just like, what?
That was the one I was going to say. That was my favorite one. I was like,
sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
I was like, oh my God, you guys.
I can't believe they actually said that. But I guess it was for law enforcement use. But there was something about that particular video that makes me think that it was basically church propaganda. That they made the video telling people that it was for law enforcement, but we're going to show it to you guys secretly. And they actually never intended to sell it to law enforcement.
I buy that.
Maybe it was just made to look like a law enforcement video, and they were showing it to parishes and parishioners.
Because honestly, I was kind of thinking, when we were watching it, I was like, this is not going to be any help to any law enforcement agency anywhere.
No.
Because one, all the shit about crimes, they already know all that shit.
Right.
The only thing in there that was like a cult was about like the symbols and the altars. And I'm like, well, if a crime has been committed, does that shit really matter?
No, it wouldn't matter. Only the crime would matter.
Right.
And the forensic evidence.
So I'm like, so what is the
point
really,
of this? Really all they were saying, they would describe all these weird shit that you'd find in a crime scene is if you find this, get help. Well, wait a minute, they're the cops. Who are they going to, get assistance, get help? Who are they going to call?
Yeah.
The church is what they're saying.
Right.
So, but I think what it was, I think it might have been a fake law enforcement training video that they showed people in churches saying that we're going to give you some secret cop training. This is what the cops are looking for. That's probably what it was.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think that would be more likely.
I can see that.
Because I don't think the cops would need any of that. Any of that so-called training as they should.
That's what I mean. It's
that
like
didn't look like any kind of training.
Nothing in there would have been helpful.
No. None of that, nothing.
It was either redundant information or useless information.
Yes, I'm not sure it was real.
No. But like I said, it's on YouTube. It's very funny. If you want to watch it and, feel your sphincter relax.
That's ridiculous.
It might happen.
Ridiculous.
It might happen. So we also kind of wanted to talk about, God, there's like so much, this is such a rich vein of,
there's a lot.
We're just like, we have like 3 pages of notes where I just like wrote down phrases of all the shit because
it'd be impossible to cover this period in history.
Yeah.
You just had to kind of live through it to understand it. It was bizarre.
What we might do, I think I kind of wanted to talk about, maybe we'll talk about the Heraldo show for a couple of minutes, and then we'll take a break, and then I'll come back and talk about like some of the Marvel.
Heraldo was like you took P.T. Barnum and the Ultimate Shit Show and mashed it together and threw in Ozzy Osbourne.
Right.
And Ozzy Osbourne was like the coolest part of the whole thing. Poor guy.
I did feel bad.
Anyway, I don't want to ruin it.
Heraldo, now he's still around, right?
Oh yeah.
He is the biggest fucking.
He's apologized for that
douche barrel. Well, because they asked him to, because it was really irresponsible. I mean, he wasn't the only one. Like Sally, Jesse Raphael did 1 or 2 shows on it. Oprah did one.
For all I know, Ricky Lake did, but I don't think so.
Maybe Ricky Lake.
I think Ricky Lake mostly just did paternity tests and baby mama and baby daddy shows.
Yeah. But yeah, the most famous one was Heraldo, and that was from 1988.
Yeah.
And what was the title of it? Exposing Satan's Underground.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
It was a 2-hour special.
Yeah, it was a 2-hour special. And at the time...
everybody saw it.
At the time, it was the most watched documentary.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was on TV. It was on NBC.
Oh, I remember it. I remember when it went down.
Yeah, I remember seeing it too.
It was almost like Al Capone's vault. Remember he was going to open up Al Capone's vault live?
Yeah.
And they found a glass bottle?
Yeah, one should.
Yeah.
Dumbass. I'm glad the skinheads broke his nose. But anyway.
He got famous by his skinheads. Well, they weren't skinheads, they were neo-Nazi kids.
Yeah.
Threw a chair on him, busted his nose, and he wore that bandage on his nose for months trying to milk that. Yeah. That made his career.
Oh, of course it did. Yeah. But so this show is also available on YouTube. We just watched it last night. And from 1988. And this is just the saddest, most sensationalistic, obviously manufactured outrage you have ever seen.
Yeah.
And it's just,
whenever anyone started to make sense, Heraldo had to change the subject.
Yeah, he's just like, okay, let's go to this other...
Yeah, you're making too much sense. We have to
Let's go talk to this lunatic over here, because that's better TV. And
lay it out for us, Jenny.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, in relation to that, one of the best things about it was, remember the one time, and it was right, there were no commercials in it, but it was right before he was going to go to commercial, right before he'd come back from commercial. And he was saying something along the lines of, I know that, people will do these shows and like, we want our kids to watch it because, I don't even remember what he was saying.
Well, they had these dire warnings. Don't let your kids
watch it. We're serious.
Program. Yeah, and then he goes on later. We know that when we do these disclaimers, it causes more people to watch it. Okay, but we're serious.
Yeah.
Don't watch this. Don't let your kids watch this.
And it was just like my irony meter exploded.
Yeah, he was awesome.
I need another irony meter again.
You gotta hand it to Heraldo though. That sexy motherfucker could spin some shit, boy. He could hype.
With his big old porn stash, and he's just sitting there looking all indignant.
Yeah.
And he interviewed...
He was like Ron Jeremy's super ego. That's the way Ron Jeremy wished he looked.
Yeah. All right. If you say so. I'll take Ron Jeremy. At least he's fun.
You take Ron Jeremy over that? Damn. Little hedgehog. Hold on, look. It's probably almost time to hear from our sponsors, actually.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to take a short break. And then we will be back, and we're going to talk more about this stuff. And
before we get deep into it.
Before we get too far into it, and we'll get carried away, and I'll forget all about it. Okay, so we will be back in just a few minutes. I would like to take a second and thank Subculture Corsets and Clothing for sponsoring Project iRadio and my show. While listening to my podcast, please take a second and visit their website at www.subculturecorsets.com. They carry a wide selection of corsets, rockabilly, gothic, steampunk, and pinup clothing, shoes, and accessories. Again, their website is subculturecorsets.com, or if you're in the Jacksonville, Florida area, stop by their store in the Avenues Mall. And if you like to save money, use the discount code 13o'clock when checking out and save 10% off your entire order. By the way, if you're a curvy girl, Subculture did not forget about you. They carry size 4 to 4X, and guys, they have men's clothing and shoes as well. So go shop at subculturecorsets.com now and use the discount code 13o'clock for a 10% discount. Okay, Satanic Panic. We're back. All right. We're talking about the Heraldo show. Yes, exposing Satan's underground. Yes. Okay, lay it out for us, Jenny. Lay it out for us. Okay, well, like the show was super unfocused, right? But it was an ADD style show. It was. Yeah. And actually it was kind of ahead of its time in that way. Yeah, a lot of creativity. Well, because he didn't let anybody talk for more than a minute or so. It almost seemed like a trial. Yeah. A lot of daytime talk shows back then did seem like that. It seemed like the guests were kind of, you're like in the pillory, and then like all the audience members were like almost like disapproving, like they were judging, like boo, they were like judging, burn the witch. It was, it was kind of like that. Ozzy, the offender in this case was found with a tattoo of your name on his shoulder. How don't you feel responsible for that? Poor Ozzy, like no. I don't know the guy. He's like, I just write songs. I don't. And as soon as Ozzy said, I'm from a lower middle class background, I had no real prospects in life, and I became an entertainer, and I just want to put on a good show. And okay, Ozzy, we've heard enough from you, and then go on to the next one. Yeah. As soon as Ozzy started making sense and being, Ozzy's a nice guy. He's a little his brain's a little fried. Addled, he's a little addled, but he's a nice guy. He was looking good then, wasn't he? He was, yeah. He looked really good. That might have been a wig, though. I think it was a wig. I kind of feel like you saw him like kind of adjust the wig. I thought he tugged. Make sure it wasn't slipping off. I thought he tugged it a little bit. But I did. I felt bad for him in the show because it seemed like Heraldo was just like grilling him, and he didn't really know what to say. He's like, what are you accusing me of? You know, I'm an entertainer. You know? And he's an obvious professional entertainer. And as soon as he made sense, and as soon as he seemed like a sympathetic character, oh, we got to get rid of Ozzy. Yeah. So instead, let's talk. And another guy that kind of got, now the most well-spoken person on that show was the guy from the Temple of Set. Yeah. I can't remember his name. Colonel something or other. He was a colonel in the army, right? Real colonel, yeah. He looked just like Spock. He looked just like Spock. He had the eyebrows, Vulcan haircut, and the hair and everything. It was nice. He was working it. Yeah, and he was a smart guy. He was the only one that seemed lucid. Yeah. Honestly. Out of all of the people. And Anton LaVey's daughter, Zena LaVey, she was just, going like, what the hell's going on here? Yeah, and actually I kind of felt bad for her too, because she seemed like she had no idea like what to say, and she didn't, She came up with one good thing. She's like, where are the bodies? Yeah. If all these people are being killed, where are the bodies? Because here's the thing about the show, and this is what pissed me off about it the most. And it's funny, but the repercussions of it were not really so funny. Like the repercussions of that whole outburst of moral panic was that Heraldo was one, making a sensationalistic show that people would watch under the auspices of saying that he was helping because, oh, there's this huge organized network of Satanists and they're kidnapping children, they're using women as broodmares, there's this systematic...
Yeah, and that they've infiltrated the police.
And that they've infiltrated, and no one's investigating it, and we're helping.
Right. No, he was helping fuel the panic.
That's exactly what he was doing.
Right.
And him and everyone that did a show like that in that age, it's like I kind of hold them responsible for encouraging that bullshit.
They were making money off of it. Just like they made money off of the ancient witch trials. Witch hunters made money. And vendors opened up for the witch burnings, and, people sold food during witch burnings. Yeah. And, it's just a modern day interpretation.
That's really the shittiest thing, because you think in this day and age, you would think that people would be, but here's the thing, it's like we seem like we're much more technologically sophisticated, yada yada, but I mean, scratch the surface of that and we're no better. Yeah, the difference was that was pre-internet. Had the internet existed in those days, people would have called bullshit on it. Yeah, I don't think you could have
because the doubters would have had a voice. Right. Hey, where are the bodies? Where's the physical evidence? You know what I mean? Where are these?
Nothing has ever been found. No. Ever.
Nope. Well, if you look at the testimony of the supposed victims, the little kids, they were claiming to be flushed down toilets alive and would appear in underground sacrificial rooms where they were molested en masse by groups of weirdos, including Chuck Norris, cleaned up and returned to the daycare center, squeaky clean so the parents wouldn't notice. Right. Flush a kid down the toilet and he arrives safe. That's awesome. And has an encounter with Chuck Norris.
That's some Harry Potter shit right there. Yeah. So it was moaning
people can fly. They were saying that people could fly. Ridiculous.
You're kind of getting... Yeah, this is...
We'll talk about that.
That's the next thing we're going to talk about, because here's what I was leading to from the Heraldo show, is that because of that whole hysteria of thinking that there were these, these underground networks of Satanists, there kind of became a thing where there were people running daycare centers that were, one, recruiting kids or molesting kids or sacrificing kids or whatever. And this was like a whole organized network of them.
Yeah. And they could be traced up to the Illuminati. So that's kind of telling. Yeah. Remember, ultimately the Illuminati was in charge of this. Yeah. Or at least some said so.
Yeah, that's what they said. Yeah, so they said they'd infiltrated all levels of government, and yada yada, and there was all this shit going on. And like I said, it's easy to laugh about it now. Nothing was ever found. No. Yes, children get molested. Yes, there are weirdos out there that do stupid, weird, ritualistic, psycho crimes. Yes, that does happen. Yeah. But
it's copycat crap.
Right. And honestly, I think the more that kind of got in the media I think there was more of it because people were like, oh, that's a good idea. I'm gonna commit this crime that I would have committed anyway. Yeah. And then
they catch a serial killing. Oh, well, the devil made me do it.
Yeah, like fucking Richard Ramirez drawing the pentagram on his hand. And Hail Satan, blah, blah, blah.
AC/DC made me do it. Right. I'm the Night Stalker.
Yeah, even though he was just like a fucking nutcase.
He's a loser.
Yeah, he was just a fucking nutcase. And same thing happened with and actually look up this kid Sean Sellers, Sean. Oh, and he was a media darling back in the 80s, wasn't he? He was actually 16 or 17. He shot a convenience store clerk just for the hell of it.
No, because he wouldn't sell him beer.
Oh, because he wouldn't sell him beer. Okay, that's right. And
that's for the hell of it.
Although later he said it was because I was trying to break all the 10 Commandments. Yeah, okay. But I think he didn't say that till later.
No, of course not. He was just wild ass.
And then later he killed his parents, right? Yeah. Both his parents.
Or maybe it was just his mom.
I thought he killed both his parents because it was 3, yeah. Okay. So anyway, that's right. So anyway, he got arrested, and I think he was 17 when he went to prison.
Yeah, got the death penalty.
And he got the death penalty. Yeah. Now, he claimed later that he had been a Satanist. Yeah. And he went on the kind of media circuit, and he was in like a bunch of church recruiting videos.
He was on the Heraldo show.
He was on the Heraldo show.
They used this boy up. So did the preachers. Yeah. The preachers just used him up. It was awesome.
They used him as an example. They said, now kid, tell all these parents like what they should look for with their kid and like how the kid's getting into Satanism. And this kid was obviously pulling shit out of his ass.
Oh, yeah.
and just making all this crap up.
And the real Satanists on there, like LaVey's daughter and the guys from the Temple of Set, they kind of were like, wait a minute, who's this guy?
Yeah.
He's not a Satanist. He doesn't know anything about Satanists. Yeah, religious Satanism.
Because, the religion of Satanism doesn't have anything to do with fucking...
Yeah, you might want to tell them a little bit about what Anton LaVey's Satanic Bible was about.
Well, honestly, that was more just kind of...
It was more like Friedrich Nietzsche meets...
Yeah, like an agnostic libertarianism.
It was a form of atheism, really.
Yeah. No...
Stylized atheism.
Yeah.
It's really what
And actually, the Church of Satan now, it just seems like a kind of like atheists that like to troll Christians.
Yeah,
for real.
And dress up.
Yeah. Which, whatever.
Well, if you look at Anton LaVey and some of the prototype Satanists, you really just say, yeah, those were goths, prototype goths.
Yeah,
fucking with people,
Yeah,
dressing up in black clothes.
It never had anything to do with sacrificing anybody or anything like that.
No, sacrifice is is a Christian concept. They didn't sacrifice. They didn't believe in killing people or hurting children. They believed that animals shouldn't be sacrificed, that they had rights, that humans were just another form of an animal, that they were animals, but that animals, were awesome, if you were awesome. But, you can read it yourself.
Yeah. So, the sad thing, what ended up happening to Sean Sellers after he got pimped around by all these preachers and everything, he did get executed.
Luckily.
Yeah, at 29.
Yeah.
He was actually, at the time, maybe
he was the youngest person to get the
youngest person to get the death penalty. Well, he didn't get the death penalty. He was 29, but it was for a crime he committed before he was 18.
Right. Probably wouldn't fly today.
No.
But in those days, in the state that he was in, I think it was Texas, wasn't it?
Oklahoma.
Just as bad.
So, and I should say later that even after he died, his family thought he was full of shit.
Yeah, and
they thought his conversion to Christianity was full of shit. Yeah.
Well, so did all the other inmates and the prison wardens. Just said that no, that dude didn't convert to Christianity, and he's just full of shit.
He was just trying to get out.
Just trying to get out early. He's trying to get his sentence commuted, probably.
And all that Satanism and Dungeons and Dragons shit.
Yeah, that's right. He blamed Dungeons and Dragons too, didn't he? I think that was his main thing.
That was basically just he was absolving himself of responsibility is what he was doing.
Sure.
He was trying to say, it wasn't me. I got into Satanism, and Dungeons and Dragons made me do it.
He was trying to play the Jesus card and get his sentence commuted to life. Didn't work.
Nope, he's dead.
Well, they saw through it.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody did. I don't think there was that many people that actually thought it was genuine.
No.
But so speaking of crimes and also shit like that, I wanted to get into the McMartin.
Did we finish with the Heraldo show?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, all right.
We wanted to get into the McMartin preschool thing because because this makes me so mad.
I got to tell you the truth. When I first heard this case in those days, I thought that maybe there was something to it. Because they had people arrested. And they were trying them. And something must have happened.
And going back to the Heraldo show, the Heraldo show had a bunch of the McMartin parents of the kids. Remember? There was the whole group of them was there.
That's right. Which lent credence to this.
That's what I mean. This is why I hold them responsible for this kind of crap. Because this happened a lot. This was only the most famous case, but there was a lot of this going on.
On a smaller scale.
On a smaller scale. But this was the biggest one at the time. And basically, it was a preschool in California. It was owned by a family, the McMartin family. They were some other employees, friends of the family that worked there. Daycare, no complaints, never anything like that. Now, one of the mothers of the children, I think, made the initial allegations, saying that her kid had been molested. Now, I read somewhere that actually her ex-husband, her estranged husband, worked at this daycare.
Huh.
So she might have had some kind of ulterior motives.
Right.
Too. Now, like I said, here's the shitty thing about it is that, yes, children really do get molested. Yes, horrible things like that happen. So it's almost like when something like this happens, it's almost like you want to disbelieve every case of it. And you can't do that. And that's why I don't like this kind of shit, muddying the waters, right? Because this shit, this just got ludicrous. The woman made the initial allegations saying the kid was molested. And as it went on, it just kind of snowballed into this ridiculous. I mean, there's no way that this shit could have been happening.
No way it could have happened.
There's no way this shit could have been happening. Now, several of the owners of the daycare and several of the employees were arrested.
Yeah.
And they, they questioned a bunch of the kids and a bunch of the kids' parents. Some of the shit the kids were coming up with
was hilarious.
Was just,
scary, but hilarious. There was just no way could that have happened.
These
people
kids
flying.
Yeah, these kids said they saw witches flying around. They were in a hot air balloon.
They could be flushed down a toilet.
And
arrive in a secret chamber. That there were tunnels underneath the daycare that went to remote sites where they would be used in porn flicks and rituals.
There were orgies at car washes and airports.
Yeah, and a dude spent 5 years. The owner spent 5 years in prison behind all these accusations.
Yeah,
and they couldn't even find these tunnels.
No, there were no tunnels.
Nothing there.
Yeah, so these kids said that they showed the kids pictures of people that molested them and stuff. One of the kids picked out Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
Some of the kids said they'd had holes drilled through them. It was just retarded. And it's like nobody believes that. But
if you got raped by Chuck Norris, you wouldn't be walking.
Oh, let's not. Okay.
Anyway.
Oh shit, Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
So so this trial went on, and at the time, it was the longest and most expensive criminal trial in U.S. history.
Yeah.
Went on for years and years and years.
It was like the Nuremberg trials.
It was, and it just went on and on. It went on for what? Shit, it was still. It didn't end until
6 years.
It didn't end until 1990.
Yeah, so 5-6 years. Huh?
It didn't end until 1990. Now, during the course of the trial and somewhat afterward, spoiler alert, at the end of the trial, no one was convicted. No one. They could find nothing. There was no evidence that any of these kids had been molested. There was no evidence of any tunnels. Chuck Norris didn't hurt anybody. There was no witches were flying around. Yeah. No kids were flushed down toilets. No animals were harmed in the making of this podcast.
And then they find out that the prosecution held back all this evidence. That the woman who brings up the accusations was fucking crazy.
Was mentally ill.
She was mentally ill.
And an alcoholic.
And then what else did they hold back on? There was just all kinds of stuff. All the exculpatory evidence that would have freed the accused, they held it back.
Yeah.
And it was because the prosecutor was coming up for re-election and he was on the losing side of a re-election.
Yeah.
Which, man, that goes to tell you.
And he was like, oh, man, a whole, cult of child molesters. I'm gonna be elected forever.
Yeah.
I'm a hero.
Which goes to show you cannot rely on that system. You got good people in that system, but they got people that are out for their own good.
And also, here's another thing, too, and I kind of wanted to go into this briefly. There was a book that came out, and this kind of fueled into a lot of it as well. A book came out in 1980, and it was called Michelle Remembers, written by Michelle Smith and Lawrence Pasder. Who was her therapist, and actually they married later.
Yeah.
So, take of that, make of that what you will. So basically, that was what started the whole quote-unquote recovered memory movement, saying that in this book, she claimed that under hypnosis, she had remembered that her parents had basically pimped her out to a satanic cult who did all these horrible things to her. And she didn't remember it until later on, which nowadays most people know that that's crap. Usually if something traumatic happens to you, you don't forget it. And also under hypnosis, people can become actually very suggestible. So you can plant anything you want and make it seem like a memory later on. So, there's a whole gray area, but it was a very popular
Obi-Wan only
book.
says in the weak-minded, though.
Okay.
Only in the weak-minded.
Well, if Obi-Wan says...
These are not the droids you're looking for.
All right. So, that's good. All right. So basically, the two of them, these two dipshits that wrote this book, they were either friends with or they consulted with the parents and the children and sat in on some of the questioning and whatnot for this McMartin preschool trial. So they basically determined that these idiots were coaching the children.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the kids later on, when they grew up...
Yeah, they came out.
They came out and said, yeah, we just made it all up.
Yeah, made it up because they wouldn't accept anything
They
else.
said they wouldn't accept any other answer. They just kept... If we answered something they didn't want, then we just kept...
ask it again.
We just kept making shit up until we got something. They said, okay, that's what... Okay.
Yeah.
Because, they just did what their parents wanted them to do. And, like I said, there was this whole recovered memory thing, too. And that kind of all factored into it. And like I said, at the end of it, these poor people that Ray Bucky, the main guy, I don't know if he was the owner or he was like someone that worked there.
I think he was the owner.
He might have been the owner, okay.
I think.
He was in prison for 5 years.
Yeah.
And he didn't do a goddamn
Never got charged.
They couldn't find... Yeah. They didn't charge anybody. 0 convictions. 0 convictions. And that, like I said, that just goes to show, like, this kind of shit, it's so silly and so stupid. Like, you have all these stupid... fundamentalist people standing in their churches saying, yeah, He-Man is Satan and this is satanic and that's satanic, but it actually does affect real people's lives.
Well, you got people in these churches saying, well, of course he did it. There's a devil.
Exactly.
If there's a devil, then that means he did it.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying.
And that's kind of going back to, like, on the Heraldo show.
It's the same logic that was in the Salem witch trials.
That's what I mean.
Where they call it phantasmal evidence.
Yeah.
That it was based on phantasmal evidence.
Yeah.
Or was it called phantasmal evidence? Or spiritual evidence?
I thought it was spiritual evidence.
Spiritual evidence, yeah.
That's what, it's exactly the same.
Spiritual evidence is the evidence you just feel that exists.
Yeah.
I feel that it exists, so therefore it exists.
Yeah.
It's spiritually. I know it's spiritually in my heart.
I pulled it spiritually out of my ass.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
okay.
where that comes from.
Yeah.
But it's just, like I said, it's so sad. And actually, if you guys have not read it, there's a good book by Michael Shermer called Why People Believe Weird Things. Mm-hmm. And he does a whole chapter about, I think he talks about the McMartin preschool trial a little bit in there, but he talks about the Satanic Panic and compares it directly to the Salem witch trial. And he shows, like, the pattern of what happened was pretty much exactly the same.
It was the same shit, and goths got caught up in it.
We
goths
did.
And heavy metal guys.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that, I was going to mention that as well because
your mom or dad would run into your room at any moment and start tearing up your albums. You just never knew when it was going to happen.
My parents did that because my parents were cool, but
I knew a lot of kids that happened to.
Yeah.
I had Bill tear up some shit every now and then.
No way, did you? Really?
Yeah. No big deal though.
I didn't.
A Judas Priest poster, man, he tore it up.
Oh.
Yeah. It wouldn't have anything to do with Satan, though. He just goes, that guy's a fag. Fucking tore it up. I said, you leave KK Downing alone. Wasn't even Rob Halford. It was KK.
It was like,
the other one's gay.
The other one's gay. You got the wrong gay guy.
And he wasn't even out then. I guess Bill called it. Bill's my stepdad.
Yeah. Oh man!
God,
I didn't have any of that happen. The worst thing that happened to me, it's like my grandpa was kind of curmudgeon-y, and he was all, his big thing was because I was real into like kind of goth and new wave and stuff like that. So they're all gay. They're all gay. Yeah. Look at the earrings. Look at the hair. What's it, Boy George?
Got that spandex on.
He's got makeup on. What's that about?
Eyeliner for men. Who does his hair? His girlfriend does his hair. They were right.
I know. That was also his girlfriend's blouse. Yes, it was. That's all right.
Let's get back to this. Let's get back. We're going off course.
All right. So we also want to talk about. We want to talk about that one case just kind of briefly with Clifford St. Joseph.
Which guy was that?
That was the guy with the gay hookers.
Oh, him. Yeah. Bad motherfucker.
Now, and here's another case of. One, there's like a lone horrible person.
Well, he might have had some help. He might have had one guy with him.
Yeah, but that kind of gets tied into this. So it's like, oh, well, here's this crazy person. So that's indicative of like a much larger trend, which is not always the case. But that's kind of what happened in this guy's case. He was kind of a Jeffrey Dahmer type of guy.
He was just a serial killer.
Yeah.
And sadist.
Yeah.
Sexual sadist. Picking up these young crackhead type
male prostitutes.
Guys. And
taking him back to his house.
Tying him up, keeping him captive, keeping him, torturing him over a period of time. And evidently he may have had help. Maybe one other guy helped him.
Didn't they find a skull like in his wall or a body in his wall?
Yeah, they found a skull. He just had body parts in certain places. And one guy got away ran to the cops and said they're going to sacrifice him. Because evidently he'd have more than one guy at a time and was grooming some of them for evidently sacrifice. Now, I don't think it might have been a real sacrifice. I'm sure they killed the guy, but I think the guy was just role-playing being some kind of a wizard, say satanic wizard or something.
Yeah.
Either that or it was just a way of justifying what he was doing. He was just a lunatic, really. You can't read into that shit.
Yeah, and you can't take the actions of just one batshit crazy person.
Right. That was not part of a satanic...
And say it's part of some big organized...
force, no.
Like, oh, you know, it's kind of like they do with all this shit with the Freemasons, the Illuminati, and all that kind of shit. It's like, you take these little bitty... I mean, yeah, that guy was a serial killer. Yeah, he was crazy. He killed a bunch of people, and that's terrible.
Yeah.
But that's not indicative of a larger trend. It doesn't mean that there's other people that do that.
He may have been playing off of a larger trend because they had the Satanic Panic was going on.
It was going on at the time.
So he's like, oh man, I'm one of them guys. I'm going to be like those guys.
He jumped on the bandwagon.
But when you look at pictures of the guy, he's just a middle-aged loser.
Yeah.
Middle-aged loser, nobody.
Yeah.
That's who he was.
And that's another thing, too, is that a lot of these guys that commit these sorts of crimes are exactly that kind of person.
Yeah, he wasn't even scary looking.
Yeah, they're just kind of these schlubby, middle-aged white dudes.
Yeah.
And I think that even if they're not really Satanists or they think that's bullshit, they'll kind of latch onto that.
They want to be a Satanist.
Because, it'll give them more attention.
Right.
They'll feel more powerful. They'll get in the media as like, oh, satanic killer, and now suddenly he's somebody.
He may have even bought the Satanic Bible, Anton LaVey's book, and read it and go, oh, fuck that. That's too much trouble.
Reading.
Screw them.
Who wants to do that?
Screw them. They don't know what they're talking about. I'm going to write my own Satanic Bible. Come here, boy. Cracking the lip.
Woo.
Just quite crazies.
Yeah, it really was. And, like I said, a lot of it was funny, especially all the shit about... I'm still laughing about the fucking throwing the Dungeons and Dragons pieces in the incinerator.
Yeah,
and
screaming coming out. Just ridiculous.
And how the Smurfs were satanic.
Yeah, just fantasy.
And all that kind of stuff.
Well, it kept people going to church.
Yeah.
I think part of it is that you had, this society was becoming rapidly more secular.
Yeah.
So the fundamentalists were being threatened. They're like, man, we're losing members. We have to have a panic to bring them all back.
Right.
So I think that was part of it.
I think that generally happens. That happens to a lot of groups, like especially when they feel like they're losing their grip or they feel like they're losing their power in society.
Right, the money was drying up, so they had to have a way to
then
get
they'll go
back.
more extreme.
Right. Because for people that didn't live through that time, you had a lot of televangelists. And the televangelists were all getting defrocked as basically showmen. It was like something out of Hollywood.
Yeah.
They'd have their own little show. It was almost kind of like a reality show. They'd get up there and preach, and they'd try to be something that they weren't, and then they'd get busted by the cops with male prostitutes, or they'd get busted having an affair with some kind of hustler honey. And the televangelists were on the decline. They were
because every single one of them
was a fake.
If you were big, done for something.
If you were big, you were a fake. Now, I'm sure they had good preachers, but they were probably mid-level or lower level, and they were local.
All the ones on TV were...
All the ones on TV were charlatans.
They were total dickholes.
Yeah. And that was helping...
Total hypocrites.
And that was actually destroying Christianity.
Yeah.
Even Depeche Mode was writing songs about it from that time, remember? Personal Jesus and all that.
That's right. And like you said, it seemed like... That was why I was so surprised that law enforcement, quote-unquote law enforcement video come out so late, like in 1994, because to me it seemed like by the time I graduated from high school, you didn't really hear about it much anymore. Yeah. Now, when I was in high school in the late 80s, I did have a book. I didn't pay for it. Someone stole it, and then they gave it to me. By Bob Larson, who I think is still around.
Okay.
He's an evangelist and an exorcist.
Yeah.
Also, he has a couple hot daughters, and they're exorcists also. If you ever want to be exorcised by kind of a hot, crazy chick, here's your... I think they still do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, his name's Bob Larson. I'm not sure if he's still alive. If he is, he's probably like 150 years old. But he wrote this book that somebody stole because they thought it would be funny, and then they gave it to me. And it was called Satanism something, and it had like a subtitle. And I remember reading that book over and over and just laughing my fucking ass off. Because... He had a chapter on Dungeons and Dragons, obviously. He had a chapter on heavy metal music, and even like some pretty like normal music, like Rolling Stones and stuff like that. Somehow that was satanic too. I don't even remember.
If it wasn't part of the church, then it was satanic.
Yeah.
If you liked it, it was satanic.
Pretty much.
That was the idea.
Pretty much. And then he had like this great chapter of like all these satanic symbols. And I always used to laugh because one of the symbols that was in there was a peace symbol.
Yeah, and an anarchy sign. Because they didn't really get punk rock. They didn't know what punk rock was.
Well, I'm not shocked that they didn't get punk rock.
Yeah, they'd show Sid Vicious up there, as an occult icon. You're going, that old junkie? What are you talking about?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard him referred to as an occult icon by anyone ever.
That's Sid Vicious.
Sid Vicious. He's been called many things, but a cult icon, no. Never. But, yeah, they really didn't get it. But,
they didn't get it.
It's so hard for me because I was not raised particularly religiously. My family was not very religious, and I didn't really know. And the weird thing now is it seems like there's like all these Christian schools and stuff. I didn't really know anybody in school that was real religious. Like it wasn't something that got talked about really. It's like everyone just kind of didn't talk about it.
I think in most areas this wasn't the reality of everyday life. This was something that was being delivered to us through the media.
Yeah.
There was times when I thought maybe something like that was happening. But then as I got a little bit older and more into the type of music that they were talking about, like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and metal and then early goth, I'm going, man, these people don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
No.
They don't know they don't have a single clue what they're talking about. And they just became clownish. Yeah. It was ridiculous. And it was an attempt to get more people into the churches.
Yeah.
And it eventually backfired. Maybe it worked for a little while.
Well, I think it did work for a little while. But see, that's another thing that I can't understand is, like I said, because I was raised, not very religious, and I decided I was an atheist when I was 11 or 12 years old. And it was just not something that held any interest for me. Right. And I don't, so it's really hard for me to wrap my head around these people like those dorks we saw in the video with the Smurf toys, like talking about that. It's like, I can't wrap my mind around somebody that can live their whole life that fearful. Yeah. That ignorant.
Oh, they were seeing the 666 symbol inside the little logo for the Procter
& Gamble. That's right. They eventually had to change their logo just because they were sick of people bitching about it.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
It was just like a little moon with it was a cute little.
And the backward masking in the records.
Yeah.
Which there were whole VHS shows about backward masking. And I think that might have been Bob Larson.
I think
he the backward masking guy?
Yeah, he had something to do with that. Yeah. He kind of had his fingers in a lot of pies.
Well, you have to make money.
Yeah. So, yeah, look that douche up. He's doing exorcisms now, I think, last I heard. Him and his traveling sideshow with his kids and shit.
So what else do we have to cover?
I think we covered most of the shit that I wrote down. Oh, damn, I forgot to mention this.
What's that?
And I need to go back and mention this because this was funny as hell.
Okay.
Remember a couple minutes ago, you guys? You can back it up if you don't remember. When I was just talking about that book Michelle remembers, right?
Yeah.
About the recovered memory syndrome.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the claims she made in that book, I mean, there were a lot of crazy, people were pooping on her and all this other stuff. Yeah. But one of the claims she made was that the Satanists had surgically implanted a Satan tail and Satan horns.
Damn. That'd be kind of cool. They'd have people that pay for that today.
There are people that pay for that today.
Yeah.
How cool would that be? Do you think I'd look horns in a tail. Do you think I'd look good with a pointed tail?
Yeah.
I think it'd be kind of hot.
Yeah, long. It'd be long. It'd have to have a little spade on the bottom.
Well, yeah, it's got a drag on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I could hit you with it.
Yeah.
That'd be rad.
And they'd little 2-inch horns sticking on the top of your head.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. Anyway.
No.
So she said she had that.
We're getting distracted.
She said she had that.
So she said she had that. Now here's the funny thing. Is that the period that she said she had that done?
Yeah.
Well, there were pictures of her in the school yearbook. There were pictures of her that her parents took. Yeah. She did not have horns or a tail.
No, of course not. She's a pathological liar.
Right.
Right. And how did she explain that the horns and the tail were not there at the time she sang?
See, I would love to. I'm going to have to read this book now.
They eventually surgically removed them again? That they surgically removed them? So she could
know what? I kind of feel like...
Or did she didn't think that far ahead when she said that?
I don't think she did. And honestly, I'm kind of thinking that I'm trying to get into her crazy person mindset.
Yeah.
She probably said, oh, well, they're invisible.
They're invisible, yeah. And here's the thing, people. I mean, it was so insane that people could get away with saying this shit.
And people would be like, oh,
in the pre-internet age.
Sounds legit.
You couldn't say that today.
No.
If you said that shit and it showed up on YouTube, people would go through your history, people that would know you. Man, I went to school with that bitch. She never had horns and a tail. And then they'd start saying, oh, I remember that one time she said she rode in on a pink elephant. And just be shit like that.
Yeah.
You couldn't get away with these lies. But now, because you can verify everything.
Yeah.
Now, You can't get away with that.
That's honestly, yeah, we were talking about this earlier. I said I don't think the same kind of shit would fly.
No.
Nowadays.
No. Part of the reason why the Satanic Panic flew is because the lack of information and the flow of information was slow back then.
True.
You depended basically on television.
Yeah.
Not many people went down to go buy books, because life was busy back then too.
Yeah.
And you'd hear about it through word of mouth, and usually the source of origin was television.
Yeah.
And if you liked it was a type of... Today you can get on YouTube and watch a video over and over, like your favorite music video.
Yeah.
Back in those days, you might see it once a week.
Yeah.
You would never see a Bauhaus video.
No. I remember having to wait.
You might see it on MTV once.
Yeah. Well, I remember having to wait, you'd listen to the radio and wait for hours for a good song to come on, and then you'd hit the cassette tape. You'd record it.
Yeah.
And then you try to cut off the end with the commercial and shit like that. Yeah. Sad. Funny. Yeah. Man, our youths were so...
Yeah, millennials will never understand what it was like. It was a simpler time.
It was. It was very simple. In some ways it was better, but I wouldn't go back, though.
No.
I know that there's kind of a lot of nostalgia
about
a lot of 80s stuff, which I can get. I still like a lot of 80s music, and, most of the shit I like is 80s music. But, and I like a lot of the movies from the 80s. But some of the stuff, some of it, that shit sucked. Some of it sucked back then.
Yeah, but your taste wasn't as well defined because you didn't have access to anything.
Yeah, now you can
access everything instantly.
Yeah, even shit we remembered when we were kids. We're like, hey, that show. What was that fucking TV show we were talking about the other day with the schmooze on it and everything?
Oh, what the hell's the name of that?
The Herculoids. And you were thinking about that, and we looked at it, and of course it's on YouTube. And I was like, holy shit, I had forgotten all
everything's
about
that.
Everything's on there,
including old commercials.
Yeah. Crazy. That's insane.
Well, that's pretty much it. We need to wrap it up then. Is there anything else on the Satanic Panic?
I think we kind of covered everything. Chuck Norris, children flush down toilets. We kind of covered everything.
Leaving in a balloon. We're going to leave the daycare in a balloon to go get ritually sacrificed and molested.
Bye. Be back later.
Have me back in time for my parents to pick me up.
Be back in time for snack time.
Hopefully the wind will be blowing right. We'll make a direct landing on the roof. Of course, nobody in the whole neighborhood saw this blimp or balloon come and pick the kids up.
I wonder if the hot air balloon was red with horns on it.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Because it has to be. It had to be.
We got to stop it.
All right. We're running out of time. We got to shut up now. Okay. This has gone on long enough. Okay, well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed the show. If you like the show, check us out on Twitter, 13 o'clock. Check us out on Facebook, 13 o'clock. And check out our YouTube channel, which is 13 o'clock podcast.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah, our YouTube show has visuals to it.
Well, obviously,
which enhance the experience. So we invite you to subscribe.
Yes, or you can download it from iProject Radio or get it from our blog or whatever.
Yeah, the links are probably all in the description anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So, look around. You guys know how the internet works. Okay, so we'll see you again next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.